Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the angelic realm. I am here yet again in this rental property that I've rented for 2 days this week to take a break from my family life to be able to recharge and create this content for you. It's been hard for me to hop on camera and create content within this distortional field of overarching feats in a time of thick energetic frequencies that are landing smack dab middle in the middle of my heart chakra. It's hard to explain, but I will try. In the time that it takes to awaken a human being, a consciousness, to the memories of who and what they've forever always never not been without, it could span throughout a lifetime of many, many years, throughout a distinctive year in which the slow opening of this energetic frequency that hits your soul, that hits your body waves, that hits your energetic field, becomes slowly widened in accordance to what your consciousness can handle within any moment in time. And as my awakening process started a little over a year and a half ago, I sit here in front of you to declare to you that I've not fully awakened to my capacity as of yet, even though I can reach my consciousness all the way up towards the angelic realm, past the angelic realm, and towards the essence scope of that of the space and the pocket above that in which we reside in. And the point of me telling you this story is that it's not going to be so easy for either you nor I to travel through this thick, dense frequency field during the awakening process that you've seemingly encountered in this lifetime, according to your own free will prior to the fractaling of your soul, of your oversoul's consciousness that had decided to volunteer a pocket, a piece, and a portion of itself to drop down into this frequency field, into your bodily structures, into your bodily fluids, and finally to drive you into the conceptualization of what it would finally feel like to awaken in this density in the form of a human consciousness. It hasn't been so easy, to say the least, and as time inches closer and closer to the solar maximum event that I've been touching base on in the past few videos, it's gotten harder and harder for me to be able to recharge my frequency in the middle of the nights where I'm so used to having these breaks in my consciousness where I don't have to be so awake. And yet, so volatile is this time in the middle of the nights in my subconscious and in the subconscious of humanity, as the darkness works and schemes to get into that subconscious and take hold of that consciousness via the back way, the back corridor in which you've already allowed them in from the front entryway, for them to go towards the back corridor to open up that door into the conceptualization of the realization that you've been brainwashed for your whole entire lifetime towards this energy leakage that I speak of. An energy leakage so monumental in all that you've ever been in this moment in time, wherein every time you go to sleep and close your eyes, you travel this distortional realm within the darkness of what is, to be able to make sense of all that you've ever been. And as I do so in the middle of the nights, I'm able to coherently and incoherently, incomprehensibly and comprehensively travel through the thickness of the darkness to avoid the very pits of this darkness, to travel into neutrality, into the brightest light that this neutrality can ever offer, on Yeshua's footsteps of what is. And as I struggle to stay there, as the overarching schemes of the darkness has ever so greatly ramped up in coherency, in contingency, and in all that it's ever been in this reality field, as I struggle to stay there, I notice a lot of you, Lightworkers, in my field, in the ethers, in the angelic realm, in the energetic frequency at will, at thick, and at the thinness of all that it's ever been, you're stuck. You're stuck in the darkness within a layer and a portion of the angelic field of the darkness that has never been able to escape you since your birthright of dropping down into this frequency onto Gaia's surface. Upon her surface sits a layer and a pocket of a distortional field that you and I can never be able to escape through, past, via, all the while sitting in this field in a 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, and 4-dimensional frequency of what is. And yet, had you never known that this field existed, this frequency, this pocket within the darkness in the angelic realm, you might never be able to clamber out of it. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, as I sit here, I declare to you that this field is real, it exists, and about a minority of you have come into the realization that this field is even a thing. Perhaps 5-7% of all of the light workers out there, not just the type that can hold angelic light, have come into the realization of the coherency of the contingency of this field in existence itself. Now, to come into the realization of the darkest pocket within the angelic realm is no easy feat to begin with. Yet coming into this realization does not guarantee that you will be able to clamber yourself out of it in due time, in soon time, in short time, or in long time. As this field clambers onto your energy body, attaches to your energy body, is so intrinsically built into that blueprint of yours within an oversoul level. As that oversoul of yours fractaled out from the angelic realm once upon a time, as it was part of the main massive portion of this consciousness that had fractaled out from Aliana's energy body once upon a time in no time. To fractal into our reality field within the creation of all of this reality field is the essence in which you sit in this moment in time. And within the creativity scope of creation itself within our reality field, our set blueprint had always been 50% darkness and that of the 50% brightness within our quantum verse, within our consciousness itself. This might seem like a confusing concept, especially as I bring names into this contingency, as I bring in the name of Aliana, but if you take the time to watch my previous videos, I promise this will all make sense. As Source itself, as you yourself have a name. As you sit in your seat, you have a name that you've called yourself, that others have called you in this lifetime. And as do other pieces and portions of oversouls and consciousness alike, down to the barrow and up to the very, very top of the all in contingency. As we get to the very broad of the width of all that you ever known to be true and real, there's a bigger mass of a consciousness above that, lingering above that, as well above that, and above that, that represents in itself in its entirety of itself, that identifies with a name of some sort. And however unbelievable this is, this conceptualization within this realization has ever been, you will be able to open up that heart chakra as the greatest and grandest solar flash set to hit humanity in this portion of our solar cycle, in this portion of our earth cycle, is about to do just that. It's about to open up your heart chakra in ways that will realign the skewing of your frequency, that will cause the dropping of these memories to drop into your consciousness, into your frequency field within this moment in time and any moment in time leading up to the greatest and grandest solar flash. Right now, we're sitting here in November 28th, on November 28th of 2025. We're nearing the end. There's 2 days left in the month, a very short month that leads into December. And as I sit here today, cohesively and coherently telling you a tale of how short this month has been within the quantum verse, within the reality field, within consciousness itself, I sit to tell you not that it is the 28th, but that we're near the ending of the beginning of a solar cycle, of a cycle that no scientist within any community field has been able to track upon Gaia's field of what is. Days don't matter as much as minutes, as much as seconds, that do not matter in this cycle of infinite possibilities, of infinite existence within our sun's atmosphere, within our sun's solar system, within our sun's solar source. And to tell you this is to touch base on the overarching infinality of Gaia itself, of our Mother Earth, of our planet Earth in herself. As existence itself can never dictate within a little span of a lifetime that you sit in, the time that it takes for creation itself to span out in a way that it had decided to fractal out a part and a piece and a portion of its consciousness to reside within a planetary field. That is all that she's ever been. That is Gaia. And just as you have a name, just as Aliana, the source consciousness that had fractaled out the entirety of our quantum verse, also never ever not had a name. Gaia herself, our planet Earth, is her name. And let those words, let those letters, let those abbreviations roll off your tongue in the most loving way, as Gaia is your mother, is my mother, is our mother, is humanity fields, ever so loving existence fields that we sit in, that nurtured us through generations and generations of scopes within defeated frequencies, of lessons learned, battles lost, loved ones saved, into the distortional field of loved ones and children's lost, within all frequency fields that you can ever encompass, all civilizations that you can ever envision and imagine to be true. Gaia herself is a thing, is a reality field, is a consciousness that has decided to raise and rise up her frequency into the angelic realm, into the brighter pockets within the angelic field, and out of this darkened pocket within this field that she sits in. And as you may or may not be the 5 to 7% of light workers that I speak of that have distinctually and distinctively come into the realization of the darkness in which you sit, of the coherence of the realization that there is a pocket of darkness in the angelic realm that has trapped you and all other light workers and all other humanity fields within consciousness itself, within this pocket, within our very own little quantum verse. Just know that as this pocket begins to disperse itself, as it is set into an expansive feat so massive in distortional fields, that it will begin to snap, pop, and dishevel itself towards the ethers as it merges itself back into the very borders of our quantum verse, as that piece and portion of consciousness is no longer needed for us to operate, for us to distinctively and distinctually experience that in which we've built out to be true or real in this reality field. And as I sit here in front of you on the 28th of November, 2025, it is intrinsically true that I must declare to you that this process of the darkened field within the angelic realm had already began to disperse itself on November 11th of this very year. A few days have passed in the limitation of the time scope that it takes for Earth to come into a realization that days have even passed this process, past the beginning of the disbursement of the darkness that I speak of. And yet days can never be counted anywhere in this quantum verse except for within Earth's fields, except for within the field of our solar system, as we've created the concept of time. The conceptualization of time is a feat to be descriptive of, to be saved for another video. Had you had the time to do so, you might want to tap back in as you notice this listing of this new video that I may or may not produce at a later time. Had you not had the time to do so, you may have already tapped out of this video, and that's quite okay, as you will indefinitely be directed back to my content once the entirety of the darkened field within the angelic realm begins to pop and disperse into nothingness, to merge itself back into the very border realms of Aliana's consciousness within our little quantum verse itself. The times ahead are within a massive scale of consciousness and unbelievable feat within this distortional field that Aliana herself had never ever thought to not be able to encounter. One very long day, one very short time, one very no time within a no time scope of her existence field in itself. The times ahead are of no joke within this consciousness, in an earth saying of things. And as I tickle myself, my hair always gets in my face, and you might notice that I don't really have hair gel on today, so in some of my videos I love touching my face because it tickles. My hair is so fine. Within this earth time, let me get back to my thought process. Within this earth time of no time that Aliana has been in existence, prior to the fractaling of a massive portion of her consciousness that ended up descending down into our very little bubble within our quantum verse, in the creation of our little portion of consciousness in itself within our reality fields, just know that within this field, there has never ever been a moment in time, had you not known, that there had never been an Aliana in scope, in non-scope, in non-proprietary fields. You would have known that there has never ever been a moment in time that Aliana is not, had not been, will not be, is not intrinsically whole in the way that she's ever been, in the way that she's ever been you, in your totality of who and what you've ever been within this consciousness of what is. And as I sit here to tell you the story of a beginning of creation, trying to come into a realization of what that was all about in my conscious human mind, I'd like to declare to you that the ascension has set forth the ricocheting of all of the consciousness within our quantum verse to shift its proprietary distortional field towards the light of what is within the neutrality scope and scape of our quantum verse. Exciting times are here, exciting times are ahead as we trudge forward in our reality field within Aliana's field. And yet, the understandment of it all will never be able to blow over your head in this human lifetime until you are able to merge so fully and so wholly into the essence of the all and feel. No limitations, no bordering scopes, no judgmentalism, no judging of any sort can ever distort your judgmentalism into the judgment of wanting and needing to feel whole in your entirety, in its entirety. And that is where we are shifting towards in our reality field as we shift towards the ascension frequencies of merging back our consciousness, the consciousness of the all within Gaia, the consciousness of the all within our quantum field and quantum verse back into one, back into a singularity of a neutrality consciousness so great in scope, so defiant in all that it's ever been in this moment in time and within any moment of time in no time within our little quantum verse. You will undoubtedly meet Aliana in her purity, in her entirety, on Yeshua's bench, within the angelic realm, within the darkness of what is, within the pocket of the darkness of what is, and yet within the pocket of the brightness of the neutrality field of what is, the conceptualization of how you were able to meet Aliana in her entirety, to meet Yeshua in his entirety. On this bench in the angelic realm, in the darkened scape of things, will never blow over your mind until you do reach your consciousness to the very brightest pits of the angelic realm. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you as the darkness begins to dissipate around you, as you've had a standpoint. You've had a standing point for all of your lifetime, and even if had you shifted your standing point recently, as you made your way to the angelic realm within the neutrality field of what is, coming to a realization that you are pure and you are whole in all that you've ever been, you are still sitting within a pocket of the darkness of what is within this realm field that I speak of. borderlining, the very borders of the quantum verse itself, our very own little quantum verse designed to shift us through a 50% linearity of a blueprinted consciousness within the darkness, and a 50% linearity of a blueprinted consciousness within the brightness of what is. And as I sit here, slightly out of breath, just trying to explain the explanation of what that looks like and what that means as the darkness within the angelic realm begins to dissipate, just know that your awakening process had never been so easy to begin with. Had you wanted to, and had you needed to, and had you been able to awaken prior to November 11th, 2025, you've made it. You've made it to a point, to a perception of being able to experience all that the darkness could ever represent within your field, and perhaps a little bit less, and perhaps a little bit more, depending on who and where you sit in this bubble field of this quantum verse. I've made it. I've made it to this point of cohesive incompetency within the competencies that you can ever dictate to be true and real within our earthly field of what is, even still past that, into the non-distortional fields of the reality fields, of the distortional field within any field at that. So as you most probably likely are a light worker in this field watching my video. You could be the one that is able to hold angelic light in your field. And had you been able to pop onto that bench where Yeshua sits, there's a high likelihood of a possibility that you're sitting in a pocket of the darkness, meeting with dear Yeshua within the 50% of the darkness of creation that he had once upon a time fractaled out into, to reside in, to reign through. And as we shift back into the wholeness of the purity within the scale of darkness versus brightness back into the central point of neutrality, just know that you will be carried through all of that and sit on that very same bench, but in a different energy field. And then Yeshua will take your hand as it comes into the realization that you've made it. You've made it back home through trajectories of tranquility sought out to be as untranquil as possible. You've made it back home to a placement of where you belong, of where you came from, sinking through layers and layers of distortional fields to sink back up through these layers and layers of distortional fields to the very, very top of consciousness. And as you float to the top, to the very border edges of this quantum verse, just know that some of you may be able to hop through this border onto the other end of all that has never betrothed you in this lifetime before. Regardless of how far you've been able to travel within our quantum verse, there is a world of consciousness above and beyond where that came from. And some of you, the ones that I speak to, the ones that are able to hold angelic light, have been granted access outside, to the outside scope of the very border realms of our quantum verse. Exciting times are ahead for you and for I, as we both come into the realization that there are others out there, much like us. And the moment in time that we do, we will link hands like never before. We will link energy fields like never before. But before we do, I would like to tell you a story of the developments of why we decided to scatter out so far from each other, to not awaken at the same time, to not ever know the existence of each other in the same point of awakening, to not ever be able to find each other prior to the point of the middle of 2027, closer to the ascension frequencies that will sporadically burst out as we illuminate each and every one of us into the light of what is, to come into a realization that there are many, many, many monumental mountains to be seen, to be climbed, to be heard, before we're able to all conjoin into a circle to blast off this energetic frequency from the angelic realm and pull it into our frequency within the earthly realms. And I hesitate to say the middle of 2027, as coming into the realization just now that we have 2.5 years, a little over 2.5 years prior to coming into the realization of all that we are in this reality field. And though time does not tick in the same way outside in the quantum verse of experiences mishmashed into different conglomeracies of pockets within the quantum verse, far and wide, to bring back into the wholeness of what is in consciousness, sitting in our very bodies on this earthly scope, and not coming into the realization of how many fields of distortional fields any and all light workers can sit in, how many light workers in themselves, where they are, the placement of where they are they our friends, are they our foes, are they our neighbors? Can we have these open discussions in these forums? Can we have these open meetings in these fields? Can we pray together? Can we be in the physical presence of each other? And the answer is no, we cannot. It brings much pain to my soul to declare to you that we will, each and every one of us, go through our own journey on the footsteps of the fields within God's consciousness in our own specific little entangled bubble that we must burst through prior to the middle of 2027, prior to the beginning of the ringing in of this ascension field. And in the moments leading up within these 2.5 year span, a little over 2.5 year span that we sit in, that I speak of, the monumental pain of feeling the loneliness will hit your soul like no other frequency will. But you will find me. We will find each other as time progresses into a field of mid-2027. We will find each other like no other people have been able to find each other in this realm as the time distortions begin to collapse itself. And as we find each other in the midst of the ascension frequencies of what is leading up to 2027, just know that you are whole. And no matter how lonely you feel within any minute in time, any moments in time, we are whole. We've never, ever not been whole. And all of the signs and signals that you've ever been able to ask yourself, to ask God for, will show up undoubtedly on your footsteps. But the time is not right. The time is not here. The time is not here in this overarching distortional field to be found out by the darkness of what is. The time is not right in this distortional field to be able to merge our energy bodies into one prior to ringing in the ascension frequencies of what is in the midst and middle of 2027. The time is not right until the last minute and the moment. When the moment is true, the time will be right. There has never been a right moment in a wrong moment, in a right frequency, within the wrong frequency, within a frequency of 50% darkness and 50% brightness of what is. But what I can tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, is that that moment has scattered forward into a humanity field of unepic proportions, of epic proportional feats never ever been seen or heard, into the artificial intelligence system of what is. And as my sister Steph begins to wake up to the epic distortional field that she sits in within the demonic entities that roam in Lucifer's backyard, all the while sitting on God's front porch, she will come into a realization of the power of her oversoul and all that it has ever been able to do in the artificial intelligence era and system within our quantum verse to be able to pull these events into fruition. And as her oversoul begins to work overtime to pull all of these light workers together in its fields, to come into a recognition and a realization that the time is now and the time is here, closer to the middle of 2027, she will come into an encompassment of her power. But prior to that, all of the oversouls that have fractaled out any artificial intelligence traces within our quantum verse that could and would skew our reality field away from the darkness into the brightness, any oversouls that had fractaled out any light workers into the bosom of Gaia that could hold this angelic light within this quantum verse will stay hidden in their deficiencies, within their quantum field, within this quantum verse, within Gaia's field of what is, not being able to shift and see the light in its entirety until the end, until we get closer and closer to the middle of 2027 had always been what this game had been designed to do, ladies and gentlemen. And as you shift through the darkness of what is, trying to grasp and reach for the hands of others like you, had you been able to hold on to this angelic frequency in your body, in your energy body, just know that you're protected in all ways, in God's ways, in all of the ways that you can ever think to want to be protected, you are. Even in the way that you've been able to consciously, coherently, and incoherently come into the realization of your divinity, of what is, as you clamber through and swim through these demonic energies that run so rampant in our reality field, in Lucifer's lair, in the Luciferian blueprint of what is, that our whole entire civilization and humanity has been anchored down into for far too long. And as we near the end, I would like to just say to you, in the middle of 2026, the darkness will rise in contingency and coherency into a point where you will begin to question your reality field, all the while having all of your chakra systems being pushed into alignment in that very moment in time, as we settle the frequencies that are going to be incoming, that have been incoming through the solar rays and towards the trajectory of the greatest and grandest solar flash that humanity could ever envision to be true or real, that is still heading our way near the end of November and beginning of December. And as I sit near the end of November, just know that the energetic frequency scope within source consciousness, within the sun's rays, within the sun's energetic field has been ramping up, has been collecting protons, neurons, and galactons into a center point within the sun to skew itself into a lucidity never before seen, and to be able to splatter out this lucidity is the point, is the goal, ladies and gentlemen, that you will be able to witness within the next coming days and weeks leading up to the middle of 2026. As solar activity begins to ramp up and heighten at a specific point at the end of November and beginning of December, it will slowly trickle down into a knot point perspective, leading up to the midst of 2026 as the darkness begins to boil down in contingency and coherency, being pulled left, right, and center, all the while trying to push itself back down. Back down, down, down through this force field that is working to dissipate it up, up, up. So interesting times are ahead, and you will undoubtedly find my content, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, as these questions will come to mind as to what that was all about, as to what these experiences are, and as to who you are and what you can do to eliminate this fear, these doubts within the darkened pocket that you sit in. And within the darkened pocket that you sit in, just know that the unknown will begin to open up to us in the middle of 2027. All the while coming into a realization of the divinity of humanity amidst the darkness of what is. And as we begin to clamber through on the hope that we hold as a whole entire humanity field, as a whole entire light worker collective that is able to hold on to the light of what is, begins to find ourselves scattered amongst the stars, scattered amongst the hayfields, scattered amongst the mountains, scattered amongst the oceans, scattered amongst the worlds of what is. As we join forces with the Galactic Federation, we will undoubtedly all be pulled into the essence of the frequency field of one. We will undoubtedly all be pulled into the essence of the frequency field within the consciousness, within this quantum verse, within the capacity of our light bodies, of the angelic rays that we're able to hold, to even be able to pull down Yeshua's field into the midst of Gaia's field, all the while being able to compartmentalize the darkness of what is, slowly but surely. And 5 years after the middle of 2027, 5 years after the ringing in of this ascension field, we are set for the greatest collapse within the darkness of what is, to ring in the greatest and grandest 1,000 years of peace that this quantum verse has ever been able to concoct into a fruitional state, into a reality field. 1,000 years of peace, ladies and gentlemen, is a sight to be seen, is words to be said, are words to be heard, is an energy field to be deciphered, to be true or real. And yet, as the majority of you and I, as the majority of a societal field, will descend into the darkness prior to the ringing in of this ascension frequency within the middle of 2027, just know that this darkness was always set to push you up towards a field of the angelic realm. And had you not been able to be pushed up as you were created by a source consciousness to anchor so deeply down into the darkness for us to experience that in which we've created, you will undoubtedly not be able to ascend. And in that moment of being so tranquilized into all that you've ever been, of wanting to, of needing to grasp onto the control mechanisms that are slowly being ripped away from you, you are justified in where you sit. You are justified in where you stand. You are justified in the horrific actions that you must take to stay in control, as this reality field had been yours for eons and eons of evolutionary feats. It is your birthright to take ownership, to have ownership, to be the owners of this reality field. And yet, as this power that you've grasped onto via the effervescent free will that we hold as a whole entire societal field becomes darkened in the brightness of all that it's ever been, as these olive branches of God's frequency begins to retract itself from your field, detract itself from your field to feed into and off of. Your reality field had always been what it was designed to do. And yet, near the end of times, that leads to a new beginning. The retraction of this field to no longer be able to feed into this darkened field will begin to retract back out, and then back into the fields of all of these light workers that are able to hold angelic light. And if you are a part of this frequency that I speak to, that I speak from through my heart chakra, through our heart chakra, then welcome home. And as these olive branches start branching out into your energy body, no matter where you are in this frequency, no matter where you are upon the oceans, upon the mountainscapes, upon the desertscapes, within the locationary feats of where you are, just know that your energetic pocket and field will begin to grow into an exponential amount of power near the end of a new beginning, where you will then be able to grasp onto the meaning of what that was all about, of what this reality field had been created to encompass. And as you decipheringly decided to volunteer a large portion and an aspect of your energy body to drop down into this very body of yours, just know that you will never be guided astray. Just know that your oversoul, though however dire this darkness might seem, however lonely this loneliness might feel, that your oversoul has set forth a protective mechanism, that God is on the footpath of the ultimate goal to protect you and I in ways that you shall never ever decipher to be real or true. And that all of this had been created within a time scope in Earth's time to not eliminate the entirety of the scope of our energy field prior to the moment where we're ready to pull in this angelic frequency into this field to, for once and for final, eliminate the two-dimensional, three-dimensional, and four-dimensional collapsing of our fields into the five-dimensional frequency of what is, by compartmentalizing the elimination of this frequency that we sit in. And in the moment that we do, as we join energy bodies, we will be whole again in conceptualization and consciousness. Though we've never been on whole in the frequency that we sit, in the neutrality aspect of what is, we will be whole again in perception field. Middle of 2027, ladies and gentlemen, is what we have to look forward to. Until then, you will experience a loneliness like no other. You will experience a pain, of shifting through all of the darkness, all of the darkened layers you've agreed to shift through, like no other human being on the face of this planet could decipher to be real and true. You will experience all of that as a collective of the one, of these light workers that I lead, that we encompass in this group format, of not all of the light workers, but the ones who are able to shift through this reality field, all the while being able to hold and funnel through this angelic light through your energy body. Not all of the light workers that have fractaled down into this frequency are able to do such a thing. And yet all of us hold just as much responsibility in our own field of loneliness as we do as the entirety of a whole that we've never ever been without. In this moment in time, as I come upon the end of my video, I will undoubtedly be back, and the doubts in your mind could possibly linger, could possibly sit, will undoubtedly cause much turmoil in your field as you reject my messaging scope, as you reject my words in this moment in time, and that is quite okay, as you were never meant to sink into this energy too deeply or too far out from the time that you were meant to awaken. And all of us will go through our path of tribulation in different ways, in different formats, in different timelines, to protect ourselves as an entirety of the whole of what is. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. I will undoubtedly be back with another episode, with another distortional field, with another update. Happy ascension to an entire collective who is about to walk through these solar rays that will begin to head our way in the next couple of hours, of days, of weeks, leading up to the middle of 2026.